I can barely contain my excitement because there's a considerable chance that this generator may be running by the end of the day. And if that comes to pass, it will mean that my $25 investment,
Oh,
I need to change this for accounting purposes. It will mean that my $25 investment will be a monumental bargain. There were some really good comments on the last video speculating about the problem with this machine. A popular theory that I hadn't even thought of was that perhaps the cord was wound around this spool in the wrong direction, and when I pulled it, it turned the engine the wrong way. I looked into that, and I'm pretty sure that's not the case, because if we look at the angle of this rope going down into the spool, it looks correct. Just imagine if it was going this way. That would be obviously wrong. And furthermore, when you pull this, you can see those little fingers that pop out. Those engage with these 4 little notches on this metal sleeve, and if they were going in the opposite direction, they wouldn't get any traction and they would just spin. So I think that I'm safe in saying that the engine is spinning in the correct direction. I have to say something else though that I'm a little bit embarrassed about, but when you dive into a project for the first time without any experience with the machine, you're bound to make some mistakes. I really went back and forth on whether or not I thought this had a compression release mechanism. It's important that I know that because the whole reason I dismantled this machine is because of lack of compression. I really think now that it does have a compression release. The reason I flip-flopped on this is because on the compression stroke of the engine, both of the push rods should be still. But if I look really carefully here on the exhaust side, I can see a slight amount of movement. So I think my third and final answer for the question of whether or not this has a compression release is yes, it does. So does that mean that all this work was for nothing? Possibly. But when I was troubleshooting the engine in the last video, I really felt like the loss of compression was more through the crankcase rather than through either the intake or exhaust valve. So for now, I'm just going to forget about the compression release. I'll put my blinders on there and continue along the same diagnostic path. The reason I think that this doesn't have compression is because from day one, they overfilled it with oil. Because it was overfilled with oil, oil got up past the oil ring in this cylinder farther than it was designed to from the factory, and as that oil got up toward the top of the piston where all that fire happens, the oil burned off. It left a terrible carbony sticky residue, kind of like this, and froze the compression rings in place so they could no longer seal against the cylinder walls. Bottom line, I feel like the piston rings are stuck. So anybody that commented about that being the problem, we're on the same wavelength.
I totally thought it was piston rings. That's what I was telling him from the start.
So what we're going to do to test the theory before tearing this all apart is I took out the push rods to eliminate any chance of the loss of compression being because of the compression release. I'll reinstall the head just temporarily and give it a test with this hole being under my thumb, just like my wife.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got the head put back on along with the recoil starter, and here is the moment of consequence where we figure out whether or not my game plan is still intact. I'll put my thumb on the spark plug hole and the exhaust port just for good measure. Go ahead and give it a pull, son. Again, I don't hear any air or feel any air escaping past either one of my fingers. So confidence is running high that I might be onto something with the ring theory. Let's get this taken apart the rest of the way. I want to see what that piston looks like. I'm not really sure how this is going to come apart because the engine and the electrical generator are a combined unit. I wonder what my chances are with this thing. It looks very pressed on there. I'm hoping that Santa Claus brings me an impact wrench for Christmas. Or a garage, so the impact wrench that I have can be on site.
Why don't you just go get your impact wrench?
That's why. So the nut is off, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull off this flywheel without the proper puller. What do I have here on the deck? A piece of angle iron and a drill bit. Do you think I can make something of it?
Let's see.
Okay, let's see what we can do here.
Didn't sound good.
You don't understand. That's just how we do it here on the porch. So the next part to come off is this, which is the core of the operation here. Magnets on the flywheel move across these coils, and that makes electrons move around so that my wife can use the hairdryer. Now that that stator is removed, I can crack open this case. I'll admit, I am nervous right now because I've just come out and said what I think is wrong with this machine. I'll reiterate, stuck piston rings. But I could be wrong. I could be terribly wrong.
You probably are.
Generac is an American brand. It proudly states on the exterior covers, but all the fasteners are metrique. Okay, those are all loose, and here's our first look inside. Beautiful. I was really hoping that this would be the type of connecting rod where I could just take these bolts out and pop it out from the top. That way I don't have to worry about pulling this flywheel on the other side. So now we're only 2 bolts away from cruel, cruel destiny. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're right, but I'm so excited.
We need to stall just a little bit longer.
Should we talk about your hair or my?
How about the camshaft? I'm curious whether or not this has an automatic decompression system. So let's find out once and for all. Yes, this is a centrifugal mechanism, and when the engine is spinning at a low RPM, this weight is close to the shaft and this ball protrudes up so that it just barely lifts open that exhaust valve and relieves the compression of the engine. And then when the engine spins up, the weight goes out and the ball retracts, allowing for full engine compression. So now that that great mystery of the universe is solved, I'll nestle this back where it belongs and move on to the main attraction. Close now, and here we go. Push this out. You guys are going to see this before me. Ladies and gentlemen, who was right? Jacob was right. Put it down in the history books. It may never happen again.
I knew you'd be right.
The top ring is completely compressed. You can see there is very little ring gap right here. The second compression ring is also stuck partially over here, and it's protruding a little bit right here, but it's also broken. The oil ring, surprisingly, is still intact and free in its groove. So that is some amazing news. I could kiss you.
Me?
No, not you. The only way it could be better is if the rings were still intact, so I could loosen them up, put them back the way that they belong, and maybe get this running by the end of the day. So here's the last of the barbecued compression rings. Next, I'll pop off the oil ring and attempt to remove this wrist pin without losing these clips to the forest below me.
There she blows.
Okay, I've got the piston all by itself. The next step is to clean all of this carbon gunk from the ring grooves. The only solvents I have here in the back country are gasoline, lubricant, and carburetor cleaner, and hopefully one or a combination of these will do the job, because I really don't want to take the pack mule up to the petroleum outpost if I don't have to. Alright, I've got these grooves cleared out really nicely. I still need to tidy up the top and sides of the piston, but I can do that on my own time. The next thing to do is figure out where to get a set of new rings. I'm a little bit disappointed because I really wanted to get this running today. I get impatient when I have a project that's just stuck waiting on parts. In fact, if I can find a set of rings within 250 miles, we may just be going on a little drive there, camera girl.
We may just be going out to a nice dinner then.
Gas station corn dog?
Taco Bell?
We'll find a compromise. I'll catch up with you guys as soon as we get some parts on the premises. Thanks for watching.